Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak at an event, and I love to hit the other speakers and see what I can learn from them. And the keynote at this one I was at in Savannah was Jon Finch, and he's the senior vice president of Milwaukee Tool for talent. And I was like, man, I got to go to this. And then after I heard him, I thought, I got to have him on the podcast because our listeners need to hear this. And all I remember is when my dad had a project, and when it was something important, the Milwaukee tools came out. Then I knew it was something important because those were the good ones. Those were the professional ones. And that interests me, but what really interests me, Jon, is what is going on at Talent at Milwaukee Tool? And you've been doing this for 20 plus years. What are you seeing today?
Trevor, it's great to see you again. It was great in Savannah. And the fascinating thing about talent right now is it is changing faster than we can put our programs, our policies, our infrastructure. And there's some really interesting dynamics. And I think when we think about talent, it's not a manufacturing problem or a customer service problem or a supply chain problem. It's all of it. We have some fascinating things. If you go back to 2007, there was a baby bust when we had that massive thing in the US relative to the number of births that were coming out. So by the way, they're coming to age in 2025, which means when we start thinking about finding more delivery drivers, more people to answer the phones for us, more people to actually get into tech programs or college programs, they're just not there. So we're gonna have to think differently about talent because the actual total number of human beings in North America is going to decline in 25 and it doesn't fix for like 7 years. You also think about the amount of competition, like we are all fighting to grow and take advantage of all these opportunities, this infrastructure spending stimulus, or the technology change, or the growth in our product requirements. If you're listening to this and you're stressed about it, you're not alone. We're all fighting for that same thing. I think that's part of the big picture is more competition, fewer people, and it's putting some serious pressure on your retention strategies, your engagement strategies, your compensation philosophy, as well as are you going to hire for experience or are you going to hire for promotability and you're going to train and grow your own? So I don't know, how many hours do we have to talk today? Because it'd take us a minute to get through.
And I was just talking to someone this morning and they were just kind of talking about this whole thing of, hey, I got a lot of talent. I don't know why I'm not progressing through the organization. And then we got into, some conversations about, there's been some blowups that maybe could have been responded to different. And I said, hey, it's not a secret, but the people that are looking to hire people with that growth mindset. And what is it that you couldn't have just switched this, Jon, in the last 18 months, but what is it in you personally that drives your passion for this position? Like what brought you here? Did you have some significant event in your life?
I think I grew up in a family that had that kind of people first methodology. And so I'm the only person in my family that, immediate family I should say, that is really inside kind of the corporate or for-profit world. So my father was a parole officer for decades, and my mom, educator for decades, and my sister got into nonprofit education and policy reform and is in kind of education space. And so we've always talked a lot about how do we have this connection with other people. And my dad grew up in kind of a tough house, and he had this amazing antenna, like we now call it EQ. But at the time, it's like, oh, he has a social antenna, like he can walk and read a room really well. Well, it's a preservation mechanism. And for a lot of us, I was incredibly fortunate to grow up in a really healthy, happy home. But if you didn't, you have a tool at your disposal of, how to read the room really, really fast. And that kind of connection moment to understand who's angry, who's frustrated, where the risk is coming from. It's a powerful tool that we can leverage to kind of have that communication side and do that even better. My journey here really started, years and years and years ago. I sat down, I was working for Honeywell, and I was programming thermostats over the phone lines, and I was miserable. because like 8 out of 10 calls, they would say, I need to get the thermostat to not say 77 degrees. Like it's hot in here or it's cold in here. I was like, can you take the sticker off? And they take the sticker off the thermostat and realize, oh yeah, okay, thanks. And then I'd hang up and then take the next phone call. I was like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. So I actually, a friend of mine suggested, well, what about power tools? And I grew up in a family that I love my dad to death, but he's a human being to connect with other human beings. But like the skill saw that we had a blade that hadn't been sharpened in this century, and it just smoked and screamed, and it wasn't really what it should have been. So when I took a look at kind of jumping into this Milwaukee organization, I met a guy who we had a cool connection. We told stories, we had a similar heritage, but we connected personally. And then after that, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to be employed. And he said, well, I have a job. And I said, cool, what is it? And we started kind of working our way through. So I started in sales operations. And so ultimately, I love spending time with people and I love solving problems. And the magic about my job right now is that the problems I'm solving have huge influence across a large population. And so if we make some really intentional choices and really intentional solutions, it can have a very positive impact. And that warms my heart. And I appreciate that opportunity. To your point about kind of how you grow up in these moments, and is there a moment? I think meeting my wife was my communication moment, because I didn't really know all the communication details I should have, or I wanted to. And when she would call me on it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's hard. I don't know what I want to do here, but I love you and I want to stay with you for a very, very long time. So I'll start making those changes. And as I had children, I'm like, oh, that's what it means to have unconditional love. And regardless of whatever happens, and find your way through. So I became, I think, a better father, a better manager, a better husband through the process of learning better communication skills and paying attention to the people that I was working with. And at the same time, trying to find a way to solve problems, whether it be tactical, technical, systematic. And it's been a joy. It's been a journey.
I think there's a nugget right in there, and it ties in from our last podcast talking about there's got to be an important outcome to get motivated to make a personal change. You loved your wife, you wanted to keep your marriage, have some kids.
Yes.
So you had some motivation to listen.
Yeah. And to bring that into the workspace, there's still this big picture why. Simon Sinek did a great job with the whole Start With Why, a brilliant TED Talk video, there's a book, but it gets people rallied around a purpose and a value and a mission. And there's the company mission, this macro thing we're trying to accomplish. There's our culture team. I'm working with a community impact group. And so the education, the hunger, the veterans initiatives that we're working on, there's a small mission tucked into there, how it helps our business. Looking at our long-term ability to hire the right people. There's a mission that we want to help this company continue to grow, and the amount of dollars being put into the economies that we're in, the tax base that goes back to fix those schools and the roads. Like there's this massive cycle. And if we can spend some time figuring out why we're doing these things, we spend a lot of time in our distribution center talking about the amazing electricians and plumbers, HVAC, power utility. And there's storms going through the US right now where power's out. There's nothing worse than having that bomb cyclone or a nor'easter or an ice storm come through. And in the summer, it's not cool because it's really just, no pun intended, but it gets hot and stuffy. But it's some high risk if we actually have everything start to freeze, or we get temperatures in houses that are going to actually cause people to actually potentially die. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the fact that it's our product that can get to these people to make sure that they can solve when the power goes out, or when the heat isn't working, or like it just gives you that sense of like, hey, this box matters, this package matters, it's important for us. Same thing for manufacturing. Eventually, someone's going to use that to solve or put food on the table. And so we try to connect that final why, that big picture at the other end, so that people are aligned to the value and the mission and what we're trying to accomplish. And the byproduct of that is amazing growth and opportunity and a culture that we would say is unmatched. We love what we do here, and the people are great for it. But we have that alignment to something that really, really matters. And I know everybody on this podcast listening to, you have it in your business too. You absolutely have something that really matters. It's your why, it's your statement. And if you don't have clarity about how to describe it, cool activity for a Friday afternoon, right? Just sit down together, start working your way through, outline, test, try, keep working it through. And you'll be shocked at the powerful messaging that comes out of that and the alignment that comes because of it.
Yeah, that's a great task, or something that we can do to take a moment, take that alignment. We just get caught in that whirlwind and we're just doing. and not just stopping and connecting. And I thought of you when I was doing some reading on LinkedIn. It said, according to EY's recent Gen Z segmentation study, 63% of Gen Zers, which is the newer one generation now, it's extremely important to work for an employer that shares their values. In fact, nearly 70% of professionals in this group are likely to switch industries to find jobs that better align with their values, compared to 59% for millennials, 45% for Gen Xers, and 40% of baby boomers. And this is per LinkedIn's Workforce Confidence Index. But it's just like there's so much information out there, but we're all just so busy that there's not that connection to the, hey, you know what? I'm complaining that people are leaving or that I don't have enough, but how are we connecting? How are we communicating? So what do you do at Milwaukee to keep that communication going when everything is so busy, Jon?
We have, I think, some subgroups that are very passionate and drive a lot of change. I think a lot about our culture committee. I think about our community impact efforts, and I couldn't be more proud of what's happening in the STEM education work we're doing, the veterans homelessness initiatives that we've got. We're working a lot with food market banks in the area, and the outpouring of support over the last couple of years has really put some different challenges on these groups. There's a lot of schools that were providing meals to families. So when you spend money in a school and you work on that STEM education, you're solving two problems: the gap in technology and in the future of the people we want to hire and have ready for us, but also you're helping those families really think a lot about the amount of food that they're able to provide, because then that school is providing potentially one, maybe two meals a day that helps that family with their total disposable income. We've also really thought a lot about the housing effort. Obviously, a lot of our products are used to create homes, maintain homes. And so not only are we working with Habitat for Humanity, but we're also working with a couple like Revitalize Milwaukee, thinks about how do they repair existing homes. Because the Habitat model, based on when their balance sheet is set up, they really can't go into a market and take on, depressed properties and have that on their balance sheet. But if they've got a flat set of land, they can do it really, really well. So new construction Habitat's brilliant. Mm-hmm. But when you think about how our cities and our communities are really needing some of that continued upskilling and upkeeping of those properties, we try to take a very holistic approach about how do we take a market that has education need, food need, and housing needs, and tie in groups, Milwaukee Academy of Sciences, Revitalize Milwaukee, Axe Housing, Hunger Task Force. They serve the exact same group in the part of the city that makes the biggest difference. And we see a huge benefit because not only will we see lower crime, we'll see higher tax, we'll also see the opportunity for us to be seeing more people come to the areas that we have to work in. So things like this are happening throughout all of our locations across the United States. Our sales teams have done some brilliant connections and food packing programs throughout the country. So when you think about how you get people connected, there's this story. Now, not everybody wants to deliver on that, but they want to work for a company that does. So I think that's part of this magic of not everybody is going to spend all their time doing it. So I don't expect 100% participation. I would love it if it happened, but I don't expect it. But what I can do is help the people that are concerned or interested in that find a way to give. So we have virtual giving programs. We have in-person hours donation time. We have programs for volunteers for like STEM. There's a FIRST robotics program. We have people that actually lend their brains to the next generation to help them learn how and bring it to life. And those that really feel there's a value to it, but either through family circumstances, transportation, whatever else can't, they know they're putting their hours and their time into a company that is also delivering on that output for the population that we care about.
I never looked at it that way, that I may just not be able to contribute at this time because of my personal situation, or it just may not be in me right now, and that's okay too. But I didn't make the connection that, hey, I just like working with a group that does this and I'm associated with it. And I know that there's something good else coming out of this. So that was what I was always curious about, is how do you get everybody engaged? And what you're saying, you don't need everybody engaged into it, and that's not real. Tell me about the culture committee. How could explain that to, maybe there's a smaller shop listening today, and what would that look like in a smaller company, Jon?
We talked a little bit at the beginning about how you've got to be mindful on the entire person. So I'm going to kind of answer this by kind of bringing it to the model of, when I think about hiring, when I think about training, retaining, when I think about that kind of hire to retire curve that we hope our employees go through for as long as physically possible, part of that has to do with how do we have alignment and connection to things that matter for our entire person. Some people are going to have early in career open opportunities where they're literally trying to buy their first house, or they're trying to have a family. They are trying to think about their aging parents later in life. And so you have all of these wonderful people that are fighting with their own individual moments of challenge, but also have their own ways that they want to give. And so when we talk about a culture, we talk about not only how do we maintain the culture we have and bring it throughout all of our employees, but we're also trying to find ways for people to actually give of their talents and care about something and deliver it with the horsepower of the whole company that's working with them. Yeah, we talk about whether it be a culture committee or a passion project, or, I mean, so many companies call it so many different things. Give your employees, your leadership, a chance to connect on something that matters above and beyond what's in the P&L. If you understand how you make money, you understand the value in the product that you deliver, having another way to say, we want to make a difference, we want to have an impact. And that could be something as small as like just literally a food drive. We have a competition between all of our facilities who can bring in the most pounds of food in the Thanksgiving timeframe. And these gaylords of these canned goods and these boxes, and the smiles and the pride from the people that are around it, those pictures are worth so much. And it's something they're already doing. This as they go to the grocery store, they just grab a couple extra cans of soup or beans or peanut butter and bring it and provide it. It's magic. So it's a way for your employees to see all of them at work, things that they care and are passionate about, that they carry home with them all the time. And a lot of them, I think, to the point you made earlier, have had a very personal moment. They've had something happen in their lives that makes them passionate and critically focused on something. By allowing some of those moments to happen around the workplace, I think you'd be surprised at the engagement. You'll be surprised at the opportunities that are created. And the minutes that they take, typically they give back 2x in the work product because they feel like they've been given a gift to deliver at their work hours. And then they actually provide additional effort on their own time. And so I know a lot of people are very concerned about, well, if they start doing this work, they're not doing work for the company. Those aren't, you don't hire one person that's a worker and one person that's a at-home employee. That's the same person. If we treat them holistically, we see some really great things happen. And I think when you give a little bit of that flexibility and a little bit of that perspective, you'll be shocked at not only the retention, the engagement, but the involvement that they want to bring. And the idea is like, oh, I feel like I can bring a new idea to you. It's not about it's about the actual work. It makes us better. So we've seen great engagement and success and joy and pride, and we happen to be making a difference as well, which is really where we started.
Whew, man. I just imagine like a family member, like what kind of stories do you get from people not leaving? Like I can only imagine, like if you're really engaged, you're doing some events with other people, you bring your family to some habitat event, because they do say that, right? The world is run by volunteers. It's proven in our brain science that when you volunteer, when you give to others, it actually grows your mindset. And have you got some stories maybe from maybe some of your employees that decide not to leave? Is it because I could see if I had my family working there and doing these events, it'd be, man, I want to keep being a part of this.
There's some really cool conversations that happen. We call them kitchen table conversations, like, hey, what happened at work today? Or what happened at school today? Or tell me about your day. And when you've got those stories to tell, we did this, whether it be that whole family went together for a soup kitchen for the holidays. We're so fortunate. We're so privileged. We're so blessed. It's a way for us to remind ourselves that why we're working, the things we're doing, and the impact that we can have by just taking that breath and seeing all of it. I think it also, when you think about a parent, you want to raise children that are connected to the community, connected to the world around them, and able to make a difference, whether that be through starting a company, whether that be through volunteering their time, whether that be getting a degree that we know is in high demand. There's something they're doing that is going to make such a difference. And what I really appreciate about the US right now, especially, is we're seeing a nice shift from college is the only option. We're really having a guidance counselors. When I was walking through for my son, it was a 4-year prep. Like that was the plan for this Catholic school, 4-year plan, 4-year plan. And now my daughter is only 2 years behind. They said, well, our ideas are 1, 2, 4 or more. So here are all the different options that are coming from that. And I want my kids to have good choices. And so I want them to be good human beings, and we spend time on them. But I think it's so important for us to continue to offer the right opportunities. And the ability to drive a forklift is critical to our nation, to our transportation, to our supply chain. The ability to actually drive the truck and have the CDL to be safe on the roads. And I appreciate so much as I'm passing every single truck. I said, first of all, thank you. My grandfather was a million miler out of Consolidated Freightways. And like we grew up spending time in that big cab up front and being excited about like, how far did you go today? And what did you see this week? And growing up in that blue collar, growing up in that service industry, it really helped to kind of frame up some of the things that I want to make sure that my children see and I can give back to. So to your point, it's about personal, it's about these connection points, but it's about us being able to deliver these stories that everybody wants to be a part of. And that's how you get momentum and traction and involvement and success. And then the pictures and the stories and the high fives that come from it. You can create your own energy by having this snowball effect take place inside your organization.
Part of the reason I started this podcast, I mean, one was I just believe we can be kind and hold each other accountable. And you're just making me think about a whole other aspect of things today. But the other thing is I've had some conversations the last week or two with some people that are contemplating their workplace, right? And their connection to values and just their engagement and all this. And I'm always mindful not to tell people what to do, but just to kind of like question it. And it was my cousin that gave me Starts With Why, like in 2014. And that's changed my whole thinking. And when I'm talking to these people and trying to get them to connect to that of, what is it about these companies? What advice, what could I tell them when they're going for an interview or they're trying to learn more about the company? What can they do to make sure that they're finding an organization that fits their values? What questions should they be asking?
I think that unicorn may not exist. There isn't a single question that a candidate can ask a company, or the company's going to be like, this is the why, and it's going to make sense. What I can tell you, though, is you pay attention to the entirety of the journey. What time, when, message, crafted, thought. Like, so in the written communication you get from the company, what does that tell you? Mm-hmm. When someone attends and has that interaction on hopefully video, if you're not in person, what do you see? Do their eyes match their mouth, match their face? Is it congruent? Does everything align? They believe, they agree, they want to, or are they just literally processing through the steps? My belief is that the team that you have at the very, very, very beginning of this process in the pipeline is really a pretty good indicator of what the entire organization is going to look like. So you have a sense of the culture, a sense of the flow, the speed, the what matters by that interaction set. And then I think the other half of this is really the person you're going to be working for. There's a lot of studies about you work for a person, not for a company. Yeah. People leave managers, they don't leave companies. And so that hiring manager, that interaction, that engagement, that's pretty critical. And it isn't a simple thing about saying like, hey, tell me about your culture. I mean, I can tell you about some of the culture statements that we have that we try to embed everywhere. But if you're going to tell
if it's window dressing or if it's real,
you have to feel it and sense it and smell it in how I deliver every part of that interaction to you on your way in. And I think that's where people have got to spend more time. Culture is not something, or the true balance of how the organization functions, you won't get in a 30-minute interview.
No.
So please don't try. But take a look at the reviews, take a look at the digital footprint, take a look at finding somebody. If you go on LinkedIn or any other sort of career website, you should be able to find other people that are at our organization. It's magic to me when someone reaches out and said, hey, I'm interviewing in this part of your company. I wanted to call a couple questions about this, or can you put me in touch with somebody that does? It's that whole job shadow
Wow.
program. Like we have, middle schoolers and high schoolers going out and shadowing and seeing parts of the industry and like what could be internships, co-ops, just trying to find a way to go see what it's like. I mean, we did that in our first jobs, and some of those jobs don't exist the same way right now. So it's harder for you to figure out what you want, what works.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to do more work, and I think you've got to be accountable for it. So the idea that I'm responsible for culture at Milwaukee, I am, but so is every other person that works here.
Mm-hmm.
And so the employee, the manager, the leader, we're all responsible. And so I get frustrated when I see people say, well, I'm leaving because of this, or I don't want to work for your company because of that. I'm like, well, what change did you try to work on? What voice did you bring? How would you hold us accountable? What are the values that you brought and you engaged? And how are you actually shedding a light on something that is either a blind spot or we're not aware of? If you got some visibility and some skills or some knowledge in a space, then I really believe it's up to us as individuals to bring that to the organization. And if the first no we get isn't acceptable, go find a second no. And a third
Yeah.
until you find a yes, or it's a very, very clear no, and there's a really good reason why.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for the employee. So you are part of the culture too. You have to represent the values. You have to live the values. You've got to bring that to fruition. And I don't like the idea of employees saying, well, the company didn't do this.
Yeah, I love it when they say, "Oh, well, they're doing this." Well, who? I would love to say, "Who's they?" Isn't that
Right?
us? I think we're all part of this. It's just so
100%.
funny, and that comes back to the mindsets. But some great advice in there, John. Like one, big on accountability, like kind accountability to yourself, to saying, did I just ask one person about this and then just dropped it and then basically left the fact that the company doesn't care, or did I maybe think and have some compassion that this person had 10 things on their mind and they actually forgot and they actually do care, and they're going to thank you for reminding them, or taking that to a different perspective or a different level, and just keep having the conversation of, hey, I care about this company, I'm going to ask it. And the other thing I take away from this is, yeah, like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, all these things, like there's so much validation you can do that you're right, you can't get that out of a 30-minute interview, and you're dedicating possibly years of your next life to this organization. And I'll go back to, I'm grateful that you agreed. I asked you to come on the podcast. I didn't know what you'd say, but I knew if I didn't ask, you weren't going to come on. So I had to
Correct.
ask. That's my
Correct.
accountability. And I also like connecting people that are deeper in their values, and they want to connect and learn about other companies that do foster those values and do want to learn. So if there are listeners today that are interested in Milwaukee Tool, how do they find out more?
Our public website that's got all of our products, and then MilwaukeeTool.com, definitely you get a sense of what it is that we make and the solutions that we're trying to evolve into. I think one of the things that's kind of missing as we're evolving into our challenge here is through the technology that is batteries, and through the technology that is essentially a cordless job site, a cordless service truck, we don't need gas, we don't need electricity, we do need to charge the batteries. But really, we have this untethered view of the future, and the technology that we're trying to bring with some of the software. I think it's a little bit surprising when you get behind the scenes and you realize how much technology is truly involved in the things that we do. I mean, this goes back probably almost 10 years now, but one of the first technology-based battery sets that we created had more lines of code than the Space Shuttle did when it launched. It's insane how much technology is in all the things that we're wearing, that are on our wrist or that are in our pockets. That technology is throughout the power tool construction space, and we're really trying to be a forefront there. So you'll see some of that. But if you want to know more about kind of what it's like to work here and the jobs you have available, that same thing, Milwaukee Tool, but instead of .com, you go to .jobs. So MilwaukeeTool.jobs is kind of our career site to give you a sense of what could be, and that's throughout many, many different locations. You can do a lot if you look at our Glassdoor, our LinkedIn, like we've got profiles throughout. But I think really you got to find somebody that uses the product and talk to them, whether that be your dad, your grandfather that you talked about at the very beginning of this, but also when you see people doing the work and you talk to our customers, you talk to our amazing men and women that have made this craft and this trade journey to be able to keep the lights on, the heat flowing, the water flowing. they're the ones that tell you the most about who we are as a company. What do we do? What do we value? What do we bring? Take a look at some of the companies that we've invested our time and energy in. You'll get a sense of kind of who we are and what we present. And then when you engage with us, you'll see the value connection between what we say and how we say it. I think and whether you work for us directly or if you're anywhere in the building construction trades, there are amazing companies. If you want a big company, that can definitely be us. If you want a smaller experience and a local experience, take a hard look at the amazing electricians, plumbers, HVAC, power utility, auto mechanics, the people who are using our products. We respect so much, and the technical requirements and the skills required, it's magic. It's something that you will have and use. I really worked hard with my children to make sure they know how to do the basics in the house, because as we see this labor shortage going to be really challenging for the next 20 years, it's going to be crazy expensive for us to bring in people to solve some of the basic things. Save those for hey, the furnace is out and needs to be replaced. Yep, call for that. But switching out for a dimmer, putting a three-way in, changing, you need to be able to do those pieces and parts, which means go spend some time with an electrician, go take some tech classes, go learn that. And that, I want to see you somewhere in our supply chain, somewhere in our user group, somewhere in the building construction trades. And maybe that's with us, but we desperately need smart, capable, kind people to help build and maintain the world that we live in.
Oh man, I can't leave on a better note than that. Jon, I love your transparency. One thing I'm going to be taken away is the fact of it's not always about what you say about your company, not even what you do, but it's the companies that work with your companies. And that you can learn so much from. Thanks so much, Jon.
Absolute pleasure, Trevor. Take care of yourself. Thanks for doing this.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.